Confidence in the Kitchen. My name is Todd Deck, and I am the Community Engagement Services Manager here at the Sacramento Public Library. And before we go into the lesson, I'm going to share a little bit of housekeeping with y'all. So let me get started with that. Building confidence in the kitchen. And of course, there we go. Okay, if you are having audio related issues, please exit the program and re-enter. And if you do need closed captioning, click the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. All participant microphones and video have been disabled. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I've already seen some good questions come in. This program is being recorded and will be shared to the Sacramento Public Library YouTube channel. And we'll also email you that link afterwards. I do want to let you all know about a few health resources that the library offers. We have a virtual Zumba class on Mondays and a virtual Zumba Gold on Wednesdays at 4, which Zumba Gold is like a mellower Zumba. At virtual Reach and Read on Thursdays at 10 a.m., which is a yoga and reading program. And then we also have books about mindfulness, cooking on a budget, and Leanne Brown's books, including her new book from our library's collection. We also have like the New York Times cooking. We have a resource called Craftsy, which has quite a few different cooking resources. And then a new thing, which is our Library of Things, which is a resource where you can check out a wide variety of objects. We have things like cake pans, a KitchenAid mixer, a lot of cool things for your cooking needs. So be sure to check that out. And last but not least, I do want to amplify the Lunch at the Library Innovation Program. Lunch at the Library is a program that the Sacramento Public Library has been part of for many, many years. And it's where we're able to feed kids healthy lunches throughout the summer at select locations. This year, the program had an additional grant called Lunch at the Library Innovation, and the Sacramento Public Library was happy to be part of it this year. With that, we were able to create a partnership with the Sacramento Food Bank and Family Services and the Health Education Council. And so we have a mobile kitchen that we actually take out on the road. And what we've been doing is at select sites on Fridays, we've been providing healthy eating tutorials for young people, and then also providing boxes of dry goods, and then also beautiful bags of produce. So carrots were very popular last week. Carrots, onions, tomatoes, plums, all of the good things. With this, we were able to connect families, teens, and kids to food and nutrition education. And last but not least, with that, we were able to give away free copies of Leanne's book, Good and Cheap. And also, I do need to show y'all, we have these bento boxes made for giveaways that are made from wheat that have been pretty fun to hand out to kids. But Leanne Brown's book, Good and Cheap, when I learned that we were giving away copies of this, I reached out to Leanne and told her about this program, and she was so excited about it. She agreed to do what we're doing tonight, and Lunch at the Library was a big part of that. We do want to survey you, and your feedback has been so helpful to us in learning, that you're enjoying the program, and also other programs like this that you would like to learn along with us. So we'll be emailing you a survey at the day or so after the program. Please fill it out. We really do appreciate it. It helps us get better at what we're doing, and we want to hear from you. And last but not least, be sure to follow Leanne. This is not the only thing that Leanne does. So here's a link to her website, her Instagram, her newsletter, and then she has an upcoming series, a 5-week cooking series this fall that's all about kind of leading up to confidence over holiday cooking, which is something I think a lot of people are interested in. So I think that is it for housekeeping. Let me go back to just regular Zoom and stop sharing my screen. Let's see here. Okay, so Leanne, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for tonight.
Okay, well, I will be monitoring the chat and just popping in from time to time. Have fun, and thank you for being here, everyone.
Yes, everybody. So it's our last session together, and this whole thing is called Building Confidence, and I hope that you are feeling that. If you joined us for any of the other evenings, we sort of started out from the space of mindfulness And then last week, really getting into what it means to feel confident. And I sort of suggested and tried to make the case throughout the class that confidence really comes from trusting in ourselves. And so this final class, we're going to kind of be exploring from this place of we've developed our mindful awareness. We are focusing on now and what's right in front of us. And then we're trusting ourselves with what we see and what we want. And then the last phase is kind of the most fun, the self-exploration and creativity. Because when we trust ourselves and when we are right now looking and feeling and experiencing our senses, that's when we can actually allow our creativity to kind of come into play. And we can begin to actually sort of gain insights about ourselves. I think through creativity, we learn about ourselves, what it is that we like, on a very literal level. Do I like zucchini? Do I like zucchini cooked this way? Do I like the way this smells, this feels, all of that kind of thing? It can inform us about ourselves. Or sometimes it can be in more of a experience of, oh gosh, this reminds me right now of a time 20 years ago when my mom was cooking zucchini and this thing happened. We may experience memories, or there are just so many ways in which, if we allow ourselves to be open, that we can learn a lot about ourselves through the act of cooking. And this is true of any art form, any sort of creativity, but it's really true when it comes to cooking. And I don't think it's something that we explore a lot in our daily lives. We might explore this through art or music or reading, all of which we should be doing as much as possible, of course. But this is something that we can also do when we're cooking in our sort of everyday activity, our sort of chore-like activity. We can bring that same lightness, that same creativity to it. So I really want to invite us to do that. I want to show you kind of what that looks like tonight. So without further ado, I'd also like us to place our hands together and just do a short breathing practice. Start with feet on the floor, or if you're sitting, feel your sits bones, as they call them, very heavily grounded. Just feel whatever it is that you're on top of, feel that, and allow yourself to feel rooted in place. Now let's take a deep inhale. And an audible exhale. Inhale again. Just filling yourself up as much as you can, feeling if it's stiff, if it kind of feels like, oh gosh, that feels hard to do, then it's hard to do. That's the truth of how you're feeling. Maybe you are a little stiff, maybe you're a little sore, maybe you haven't moved a lot today, and that's just the truth. And exhale again. One more inhale, slow this time, as slow as you can, just sipping the breath. Pausing at the peak and then exhaling. And with that last one, just let yourself kind of dangle and be loose for a moment. Maybe this is the first time you're letting yourself be loose. And it looks kind of goofy, right? I'm wearing this like bright shirt and I look kind of silly. And that's good. That's what we're doing. We are going to be creative. We are going to play together. We're going to self-explore. You got to allow yourself to be a little loose to do that kind of thing. We're not trying to get this right today. Nope. We are just trying to enjoy ourselves, and we're going to get food on the table. Guaranteed, we're going to get food on the table. We're going to have a good time while we do it. We're choosing to do that right now. And yeah, honestly, this feels great. Do this too. Let's get our arms out and just swoosh from side to side for a moment. Just sort of allowing the rib cage to move, something we don't do when we're sitting at our desk or we're driving or in these sort of postures that we're in all day. Oh. Whew, feels good. Okay, now we're going to start. And we're making something very simple. We're doing zucchini again because I don't know if you guys have heard, but it's the summer and zucchini is incredibly abundant in the summer. You may be given some for free by a neighbor who's like, I have a zucchini plant and I need to take this off my hands. So it's a great thing to cook with in the summer. We can often get it for free or for very low price, and it has a ton of flavor and is wonderful in so many things. So the very first step is we're going to boil some water. And I think I shared this tip last time, but it's something that I really love to do, is if you have a kettle, an electric kettle, to just fill that up and boil some of the water in there. And then sort of fill your pot, whatever you're using for cooking the pasta, about halfway. And it just shortens the time you have to wait for water to boil. So I'm just going to allow the water to come through. Taking some more deep breaths to get ready for this. This is a very simple recipe. And we chose a simple recipe for today for a reason, because I don't want to be thinking about so many things that I have to do. I want to be able to do it very straightforwardly so that I can really just enjoy the experience fully. So here I have my water. On this front burner, put it on high heat. I'm going to add a generous amount of salt to the water. Again, I think in our first class, we talked about salting the water to the point where it tastes like seawater. It's really nice and salty so that it will season the pasta. That's how we season our pasta. And I have a very quick kettle here, so I'm going to add all that hot water in here. That's more than enough water here. We'll just let that begin to boil in the background. And I'm using this big old Dutch oven because that's just what I happen to have out. And I actually don't have like a regular big metal pot at the moment. But feel free to use that. It's not like this is important to use this type of a pot. It's just what I happen to have out. So while that's going on, now we're going to prepare our vegetables. Again, just something, I already said it basically, but really eating seasonally. And this is something that is so pleasurable to do, especially in Sacramento, where you guys have such a nice long growing season. Eating seasonally will absolutely save you money. And it's a really great way. In addition to saving you money, it's also a really great way to just sort of naturally have variety in your diet over time. I think we focus a lot on variety in diet, especially, I know a lot of parents that I have a young daughter, she's 6. And so I talk with a lot of parents of young children. And we're told, kids need to eat variety. Like we all need to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables or we're not going to be healthy. And there's a lot of fear surrounding, how much variety our kids eat, because kids also naturally don't like to eat much variety, especially at this sort of early school age. They can get very stuck in their ways with the foods that they enjoy, and they don't particularly want to try new things. And so there's so much focus, I think, sometimes in our culture about eating a variety, and it's so pleasurable to eat a variety of foods, but variety doesn't have to look like eating 25 completely different things every single day. It's something that we do over time. And I mention this because I think when we're trying to lower our budget, or we're trying to stick within our budget, it's really effective to sort of buy fewer things and make more with them. Have zucchini and onion and tomatoes be that's what you're working with this week. And you have it in pasta, you have it in a stew, you have it in a stir fry. You sort of work with what you have, and that's what you're working with that week. And then know that the next week, you're going to have plums, and you're going to have maybe tomatoes again, and you're going to have corn or something like that. So there isn't this big sort of emphasis on having to have variety in every day, every week, but just over time, that's something that you can build up, and you will absolutely be healthy that way. And frankly, your life will be simpler as well, which is really nice. So we're going to start with zucchini. We're boiling water for fettuccine, and it could be a different pasta. It could be another spaghetti. It could be like another sort of long noodle, or it could be short noodles as well, would actually be lovely here. Little round curly guys, or even macaroni would be just fine here actually. I think creamy zucchini fettuccine just made sense to me at the time, and I was trying to create a fettuccine, a sort of lightened up creamy fettuccine dish. So go for whatever works for you and whatever you are drawn to. Please allow your creativity to come through. And so I have 2 zucchini here. As you can see, they're kind of different sizes, and I'm totally fine with that. I think I said 2 sort of smallish zucchini. And this is what I have, a small and a medium. Although truly in the world of zucchini, these are both small. Am I right? Like, have you guys seen those giant ones? Those really giant ones, you generally are not so delicious for cooking. Those are more something for making zucchini bread or zucchini muffins, like baking with zucchini, I would say. There's not, when they get really, really large, they sort of lose their flavor. So that's just my 2 cents about zucchini there. The smaller ones usually have a little nicer flavor. So I'm cutting off the ends, and now I'm going to slice them in half. And then this one, I might slice into, I'm going to slice it into quarters. And I'm just deeply breathing right now. Because the other thing, like creativity and self-exploration, it's not something that we force. I'm not like, I have like a fun shirt on, but I'm not going to like force, like, it's play and like, let's throw stuff around. It doesn't have to be like that. What I really mean by like play is the kind of natural play that just happens when you are in the moment. And so I'm allowing myself to just be in the moment right now. I have 8 of these lovely sticks. I'm going to smell this. The really light aroma. I'm just enjoying how this feels on my skin, how it feels to hold this in my hand. And it might look actually kind of quiet and serene. And truthfully, that really feels good too. I think play and like just really feeling pleasure is something that is often quite quiet too. I'm just going to chop these into bite-sized pieces, appreciating the sound that they make. Oh, I forgot I was going to mention. Actually, why don't I do that quickly? Just to give you guys, because we have so much time tonight. We have, maybe we'll end early, but I want to give you all that I can. Kind of get as much wisdom and goodness into this as we can at any given time. But this is, so from my book, Good Enough, I have this page that I call it's the gateway to calm cooking. And I think I talked about it to you guys before, but I just want to read from it. It's this checklist I have. And the idea is you can kind of like take this out of the cookbook and like put it on your fridge. I call it the gateway to calm cooking. And the first thing is to take 5 deep breaths. So we did that. Then read the recipe through, taking note of timing. Very key. And now I'm guiding us through this recipe. I have read it. But I would hope that if you're doing it at home, if you can, it will just make your life a little bit easier. Check to make sure you have all the ingredients or are prepared to skip them or make substitutions. That's another, there's a kind of art to that. We're looking at a recipe to kind of really try to figure out which are the main ingredients and which ones are flavors. And so usually the rule of thumb, I would say, is just like, if it's a larger amount of something, that's going to be the main ingredient. And for example, in this one, the fettuccine is a main ingredient. The zucchini is the main ingredient. The cream is the main ingredient. And then The butter is a very important thing because we need it to cook this. So we would need to replace that with oil. But then the garlic, chili flakes, lemon, and Parmesan are all flavor. And now each of those is wonderful. I don't think we want to skip them. But if you don't have them, you can still make this dish work. Does that make sense? And you can, within that, you can kind of mess around. You can go like, oh, I have a lime instead of lemon. You could use lime zest in this. You could skip the cream. You could use broth. You could use tomato sauce. We'd have a very different flavored dish, but that's up to you if you want to try that and be creative. That's a space where you can do that. Or even if maybe it's not so much a choice creativity, but you're just like, look, I don't have that. I don't want it. I'm going to put something else in. In addition to sort of noting those flavors and how you can play around with the flavors, maybe look at another favorite dish that you have. You can and sort of take the flavors from that and bring it into something like this. Zucchini is a canvas. You could put almost anything on it, anything kind of savory, and it will be good. Adding like sausage, or you could take it to completely different country by the different spices and different things that you're adding to it. It's you could really play with this if you want to, and just use what you have around, what you or your family really particularly enjoy. And you can use, and if you're a little bit nervous at the beginning, you can kind of could look at my recipe and go like, okay, she's using zest of 1 lemon, or they're using garlic and chili, so maybe I'll use this sort of same quantity of maybe a different kind of chili and some cumin or something like that. Or I'll add a little bit of onion instead of garlic, something that is close and simple, and just see how that goes and see how that feels, to try something like that. The next on this list is to chop, defrost, or otherwise prep your ingredients so you can have the most harmonious experience of active cooking. That's kind of what I do. It's called mise en place in the French sort of cooking terminology. It's just when you have everything ready to go. Or at a restaurant, if you've ever seen, it's like they prep everything so that water boiling, not quite yet, but getting there, so that everything is just so simple. And so if you do that, it will just make things a little bit easier. And then the last one is to set your intention to focus on each step in turn and give your energy to the process and the moment. The outcome is in the future, and you can enjoy this time, even if the outcome is not perfect. And so that's that encompasses like that mindfulness that we want to bring in here. And that sort of allows us to unleash our self-trust, and then our ability to sense into our own creativity and understand ourselves better. Okay. The next zucchini. This one I'm just going to cut into 4 because it's so much smaller. Lovely little batons. If you can, having nice sharp knives, getting your knives sharpened regularly, gosh, it creates so much more pleasure in the experience of chopping. It's just a world of difference between sort of struggling to get it through and pressing and feeling nervous about the sharp edges, and just allowing it to float through with just the lightest press. Now, of course, zucchini is so soft, it's like this could be dull and you wouldn't even notice, but there are other things where it's a little harder. All right, so I have all my lovely zucchini. And I'm going to do my garlic. And this is something also, this is the quantity of zucchini and the quantity of pasta that I suggest. But if you're feeding more people, you can easily add like 1.5 the recipe or double it. Or if you're like, you know what, there should be more vegetables because these are going to cook down. You want to add more in, go for it. It's not going to be bad. Everything about these recipes is it really is a suggestion, and yet there are these parts of it that are pretty important to understand that we do need to do. But within that, there's a tremendous amount of variability. And so in this case, the elements of the dish are pasta and then some kind of cooked vegetable sauce situation that it all gets tossed into. And so those are the two parts. And so within the sauce, there's so much that we can do to sort of change the flavor and change the textures. You know, do we want it to be like a smooth flowing thing or something with big chunks in it? Up to you. And I think the other thing that what I want to highlight here, if you just hadn't thought about it before, maybe it's something that is like making a choice like that is actually very low risk. Really, it is. I think we think you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to ruin the dish. And it's like, so what? So it wasn't like as good as what you imagined. That's okay. It's still going to be edible. I think that's the key is we try to make, you know, something edible at the end. And sometimes we try something different and it's not so great. And it just doesn't, it's really not important that every single meal be a flavor powerhouse. But when we try new things, sometimes we can discover a flavor powerhouse, which is really exciting. And in the meantime, you can have this kind of adventure experience of trying a new thing. And you know what? Adventures are always full of mishaps and mistakes and times where things don't turn out well. And that's good, you know, really, it is. We want to have variety. If every single meal was like so phenomenally delicious, we wouldn't even appreciate them. Like we sometimes need, like, this is how we're built as human beings. We need the balance of like not having a really, really like up day all the time or not being so perfectly happy. We need to have different experiences. It allows us to appreciate them more. I know that sounds so like, well, I'd still rather be happy all the time. It's like, yeah, me too. And yeah, I'd rather have every single thing that I ever put in my body be totally delicious. Yeah, I would. But also, I want these other things. Like I want to learn and I want to grow and I want to understand myself and I want to understand food and, you know, these ingredients and life and all of that. And so I follow that as well. And I risk the certainty, which is never a certainty, of having a perfectly delicious thing for discovery, you know? And maybe that's not for everybody, but I think it's for a lot more of us than we realize, you know, to have little bits of adventure and discovery in your life, just on a random Wednesday night. Why not? Okay, we have boiling. Oh, we have a very hot lid. Leanne learns not to burn herself. So I'm going to open this package of fettuccine. And like I said, you can use whatever you like. Just open up your package and the recipe calls for 8 ounces. And so almost the vast majority of pasta comes in 16-ounce packages, 1 pound. And so half a package. And then for every pasta, there's always a slightly different timing. And so just use your package instructions for al dente. That's sort of the like most done, but just done. So mine says 12 to 14 minutes. So I'm going to actually do it for 11 minutes. Because in this, I actually want to cook it in the pan with the sauce for a little while. And that always will soften it that much more. And I don't want it to end up being mushy. Okay, so I'm going to put the timer on for 11 minutes. Wonderful, just getting it in there. Oh gosh. Once again, I have not remembered. That is very, very hot. I'm a professional. I am actually. But I still make mistakes all the time, especially when it comes to things like that. I'm going to chop up my garlic now. I think that in the recipe, I call for it to be very finely chopped. So I will do that just to see. I've got them in these lovely little garlic chips, as you can hopefully see a little bit on the camera, but bring it up a little closer. These are these garlic chips, and now I'm going to chop them even more finely. Okay, that's great. All right, and now we're going to head over to the pan, and slightly cumbersome moment for all of us, but bear with me as I bring the camera over. Oh wait, I learned this last time. To bring it. There we go. Right, around this side. Hello, can you see me? Yes, okay, fabulous. So I'm turning on the heat on this cast iron pan here. And I'm going to put about 4 tablespoons of butter. It's actually probably not even quite that. I'm going to move all of this. Wow, it's so hot here. The butter is melting in the butter dish just on the counter. I mean, it's July. What do I expect, right? Seriously. So I'm going to let that butter melt. And I'm going to just bring over my garlic and pepper flakes. Beautiful. Oh, and butter is so much fun as it melts. And the light and toasty scents that start to fill the air in little bubbles. Oh. Just to allow yourself to be enthralled by this experience right in front of us of butter melting and the smells that are happening, the sizzles. It's such a pleasure. And I think when we like open ourselves to having that experience, just let ourselves, because I think, okay, maybe none of you here have this struggle, but I know for a lot of people, truly, people who I know and love dearly, the act of sort of allowing yourself to act like a kid is like embarrassing. It's like, oh, I'm not supposed to. I'm an adult. Like this isn't what we do. And so it can actually be kind of hard to allow yourself to open up to experience this goodness. But if you can allow yourself, even if it feels a little uncomfortable, a little like, oh, someone's watching over my shoulder, they're going to judge me and think I'm silly. you can allow yourself to kind of tune in to that child within you and just play and delight in this, you'll feel good. Here comes the garlic. Are we ready for sizzling? I think we're gonna experience some sizzling. Yes. Oh, and immediately just like intense smell of garlic. This used to be something very funny between my sadly now ex-husband and I. He would come into the room and go like, "What are you cooking?" And I'd be like, "Garlic in a pan," every time. It was so funny. It's just a really good smell. And here we have crushed red pepper flakes. Skip these if you don't like anything spicy at all. This is not going to make a spicy dish though. It just adds that little note of spice that brings everything together. And now time for zucchini. Okay, and so the garlic's getting very toasty. We don't want that. I'm gonna turn this down a little bit. Well, I mean, I like the toastiness, but I want to mix it in. I don't want to let it just sit on the bottom and be getting dark while the zucchini is not. So let's just mix it in with everything. And then now allow it to do its thing. It smells so good. So that's something for me, and probably why this recipe is made with, is with just chili, garlic, and lemon, because those are some of my favorite things. And every time I smell them and enjoy them, and they're the staples in my kitchen, and I can put them on almost any vegetable and it makes it taste good. I mean, I guess this is something from me, from my heart, from my center, from my creative space. And, you know, everyone all over the world also knows garlic, lemon, chili goes together, will make just about anything taste really good. And so having them around in your kitchen as your flavor friends, like the things that are always there for you, is just something I highly recommend. And we're going to use lemon zest in this again. I think we used that in the first night. So I have here a lemon, and I'm going to zest. Actually, I think we used it in every single recipe, which is deeply not surprising. If you know me personally, I use lemon. I use citrus zest an enormous amount. I actually have a recipe in my book, Good Enough, that's called triple citrus pasta, and it's a sauce made of olive oil and lemon, lime, and orange zest and Parmesan, and it's divine, if I do say so myself. But so I'm zesting this, and as you can see, I'm using the microplane and I'm using it upside down. We talked about that last week, and that's just so that I can see it all and then add it all in my own choice rather than just sort of dumping it in a little bit at a time. My technique, but you could use a different one. It's not, this isn't an important one. It's just something I like. It feels you know, like pleasantly controlled. So I'm just getting every last bit of the zest. So the zest is the bright yellow outer part, and as you can see up here, we have this sort of more dull whitey yellow underneath, and that's the pit, and we don't really want much of that because it's quite bitter. And so you try to just get that shiny, sort of almost waxy looking, but it's not waxy. outer layer, that's where the lemon essential oil lives. And that's what smells and carries so very much flavor. I'm gonna mix this in. And you can see as I am mixing, flipping these over once or twice, we can see, whoops, that the zucchini is starting to brown on the bottom. Oh, gosh, it smells good. And it looks like our pasta is going to be ready quite soon. Countdown. Okay. So I'm just going to.
So Leanne, we did get a question in the chat. Is now a good time?
Yes.
Okay. So somebody wrote in, sometime this evening, perhaps Leanne could talk about her new book.
Oh, sure. I guess I feel like I have been actually without meaning to.
Kinda. And then we got another one that is, if you want to use a full pound of pasta for this dish, can we do that? Do we double the ingredients, e.g. use 8 garlic cloves?
Exactly. Yep, just double everything. Yep, exactly. I mean, with the flavorings, you probably could get away with a little less garlic, but doubling everything would be wonderful.
Okay.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly what you want to do.
And sorry for doing one question before you answer the other, but yeah, so people want to know a little bit more about some of your other books.
I love that. Well, I'm flattered to be asked. I'm sorry, I'm just dealing with the pasta quickly here, and then I will be back on screen. Whoop. A couple of the noodles have just stuck to the bottom of the pot because I didn't mix it right away, so I'm just dealing with that quickly. Whoop. Right. Boop. All right, I'm back with the cauldron. This is not a cauldron. A sieve full of pasta. Yeah, so my other book, Good Enough, my most recent book, is full of all kinds of recipes. And the focus that time was not on them being good and cheap. Now they happen, the majority of them are reasonable, are reasonably priced because that's just sort of how I cook. But that wasn't the focus of it. It was my attempt to really cook through and talk about, I guess, what I'm most passionate about is breaking down sort of barriers that keep us from cooking. I think that the cooking space is such a profoundly important space for us to learn about ourselves, to feel empowered, you know, like the building confidence thing. Like I've lived that, you know, like my whole life, I felt really not confident. And the kitchen was the space where I somehow felt like there weren't like eyes on me and I could just be free. I could be a little bit more creative. I could get something done. I could feel a sense of accomplishment. And that really, really helped me in the rest of my life. It took time. It was sort of a slow process, but to begin to feel like I could do things in other parts was something that I built in the kitchen. And so for me, Good and Cheap was this space of like, gosh, I know how to make cooking accessible. I know these ways of cooking with very little, with things that don't cost very much, and I wanted to make that accessible to everyone. And then when I toured and met so many people with Good and Cheap, what I heard time and time again was people come up to me and say, I love what you're doing, but like, I'm a terrible cook. You can't possibly help me. I can't do all this. And I realized that there was so much more than money and sort of, it was like a belief that so many people had, that they weren't good at this. And what really, and it's fine, you know, for many people, if you don't care about cooking, if food and like, you don't have much of a passion either for eating or for cooking in this kind of creative realm, I think that's fine. And I know people like that, and you can go on and have all kinds of fun in your life.
But I'm talking about the people who would come to my events and come up to me and who cared about cooking, but just felt like they couldn't do it. And it was something they were so bad at, and it like seemed to pain them and make them sad. And so that made me realize I'm putting in the fettuccine now. I wanted to write a book for those people. And I also realized I would make it for myself too, because it was me in the past. And it was also me in my own journey, especially when I became pregnant with my daughter. And in my early career, I got super depressed and really struggled with daily life and feeling able and vital. And for me, working in the kitchen really helped me so much. Everything that I'm teaching you about helping yourself calm, like the mindfulness, the ability to ground and enjoy and just be in the moment, were like essential sort of survival skills for me for many years of my life, and still are actually all the time. And so that's what Good Enough is sort of about, that. And then since then, I've been just trying to develop the method further into this, using my yoga training and all that to just bring in how to make cooking into this everyday thing that we all have to do because we have to eat, into something that really is joyful, transformative, therapeutic, and meaningful. And I don't think it's hard to do because, again, like I say, I've kind of lived that. So that cookbook has recipes, and it also has a lot of ideas and like lists and essays sort of for yourself. And it's in particular, I think, a lot about when you're going through a harder time or when you don't have a lot of self-worth. That's why it's called Good Enough, because it's talking about good enough in your dishes and good enough in yourself as well. I am grabbing the cream. And now, this is going to be an experiment. Someone last week said, can I use a non-dairy? And I was like, yes, you can. But I haven't really messed with that much. So I got myself some non-dairy creamer, which is not as thick as, I'm gonna get some more butter out of the fridge. It's not as thick as a dairy cream. So it's a little bit different. So I just want to make sure that it works well here. And if it doesn't, then I know, and I won't steer people wrong. Not, of course, that there's wrong and there's judgment and all these kinds of things, but still, there are times if something just really doesn't work particularly well, I would like to warn them against that. And so I'm adding some more butter in here. And then we're also going to get the Parmesan, but we're basically good. Like, this is done. This is really, just mix it all together. And as you can see, the cream kind of disappears. I'm actually going to add just a splash more here because there's quite a lot. Maybe that's the thing to keep in mind. If you're using non-dairy that is lower in fat, it's going to cook off a little bit quicker. So you may want to use a little bit more. I'm just going to get my block of Parmesan here. All right, and yeah, this one really comes together fast. So we are pretty much done, which is a lot of fun. I'm gonna get my tongs and just toss everything together. I just turned down the heat. I'm gonna actually turn it back on quickly because I want this cream, since I added in the second quantity of cream, I'm noticing it's not quite as well mixed. So I'm gonna give it another couple minutes. Let me give this a little taste. So hot. Good. I'm tasting the chili flake I'm tasting the garlic. I'm gonna add a little bit more salt to everything. Okay, that looks perfect to me. That's just how I like it. So I am going to bring the camera back over. And we can plate and finish up and chat some more. Fantastic. I'm going to grab myself a nice serving here. Noodles. Zucchini. Beautiful. And I suggest adding basil, and I just went outside just before, gosh, this feels a little, here we go. Okay. I went outside and have a little basil plant out front, so I'm gonna add a little bit of that in. If you have it, fantastic. If you do not, no worries. And you could add it, actually, I might just kind of get a bunch of it and scrunch it up. Chop it and add it right into the heat here. Let's get that basil aroma through. Herbs, like so many things, really respond well to heat. So when we add it right at the end, as long as there's still residual heat, it's going to get into everything, but it's nice to add it. I say they want heat, and at the same time, we don't want to do so much heat because we add it right at the end so that it can like just kiss the heat a little bit. It's the aroma and the oils of it can kind of get into everything, but it won't like get cooked so that it just loses its aromatic qualities, which can happen too. So it's like finding kind of that sweet spot. Like you don't need to be scared about it, but just like add it at the end. Add it at the end, knowing that it's sort of delicate, and that way you can get the most out of it. And yes, I absolutely prefer fresh basil over any. The only like fresh, I'm not a big fan of fresh oregano. I think dried oregano is much better but pretty much everything else I would prefer. I tend to prefer fresh if you can possibly get it, but it's just not always, it's not always so accessible, especially when it's not summer. Herbs can be quite expensive. You know, we have our cilantro and parsley is usually like pretty easy to get and not too bad, but a lot of the others can be pretty expensive. So it's just one of those things, you know, wonderful to have if you can, and so darn good, but something that we don't need to, you know, if we're needing to keep within a budget and we can skip the herbs and enjoy some of the other food, I think all power to you, and you don't need to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out so much. There's still so much pleasure that's available to us. So look at this lovely bowl. I'm gonna twirl myself up a noodle. I like it. And I'm happy with the non-dairy creamer, actually. It's lighter. I got an unsweetened, what is it? An unsweetened coconut cream and almond milk. I was kind of trying to actually not do, because almond sort of has a sweetness that I was thinking could be a little bit weird in here, but actually it all works quite nicely. And coconut also sort of has that sweetness, but truly dairy cream is also sweet, and yet it takes on the flavors around it. So it works very, very well.
So
Todd, do we have any other
we do. So one question came in asking, would this work with spaghetti squash?
Mm-hmm. It would be different. Spaghetti squash. I mean, okay. So spaghetti squash, you would not chop it into strips like that. You would like scoop it out because it would have its fun spaghetti quality. And the overall dish would be different. I would say that you would, I mean, it would be interesting. Basically, absolutely. And I love that question. And I love it being in this class because I think you would have a little adventure with it. It would be different. It's such a different texture. And so you don't end up with like chunks. It sort of falls into its little like spaghetti bits. And so when you are cooking with it in the pan, you would end up with something that was a lot more like squishy and random and more probably saucy than this. This is, as you can see, it's more of a noodle dish with chunks of vegetables in it, and it's held together in this sauce and this flavor, and everything is coming together and it all works really well together, but it's more like pieces of vegetable in it. That one might end up being a bit more homogeneous, which would be interesting, and you would have a softer, squishier texture, which would be great. But flavor wise, I think like in terms of really the way that it would taste, very similar, because summer squash and spaghetti squash and all of that are so related to each other. So, and I think you would want to cook it for a little bit longer because spaghetti squash just has a little bit more body to it than a summer squash or a zucchini.
Okay. Well, we've got one. It's more of a comment, and it's a great one. It's a little long, but just go with me. This is more of a comment on the first recipe than a question. I made a version of the tuna and spaghetti recipe using leftover chicken breast. Also some fresh and canned vegetables. I would not have guessed to use just canned diced tomatoes along with some dry oregano and basil and some fresh garlic instead of a spaghetti sauce. I was really surprised at how flavorful that was and how simple it was.
That's all spaghetti sauce is. Can you believe it? I know. Isn't it wonderful? One of my favorite things in the world. Favorite thing. Like I was saying, that was so much of what led me to do this work, like to write Good and Cheap. And all this was my own exploration of cooking, and realizing, you know, so many people are kind of out there buying a jar of spaghetti sauce or pasta sauce and thinking like, well, this is this delicious thing, I have to bring it home, and not realizing it's made of canned tomatoes and garlic and olive oil. And that's really it. And you could do that yourself and you make it fresh, and it's so much cheaper, and it's like profoundly satisfying to make something that's simple and have it be that good, you know? And so I love to ever like be able to put some breadcrumbs down and let you like have that experience. So I'm so thrilled, and thank you for sharing that. I'm so happy that you experienced that.
And there's actually some more from this commenter. I have been going to my local neighborhood food bank giveaway, and one of the things we've gotten plenty of is canned diced tomatoes and spaghetti. So this is a recipe I will definitely be using in the future a lot more. I am so looking forward to making more of the recipes from the book.
I'm so happy to hear that. So happy to hear that. That is the best thing I could hear, really.
And part of why we, kind of started talking was that exact reason, as far as the food bank and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and that there are so many ways to put together things that we often. Actually, you know what? Since we did so well today, and we kind of got through this, and we've done everything just to go over something. On that note, one of my other. I mean, there's so many favorite recipes in this book. I don't want to say favorite, but something that I wanted to point out to everyone that is in that vein is these peanut butter and jelly granola bars. This one was, this recipe was really based on that exact situation, that food banks so often have peanut butter and oats and jelly. And these are such common staples that we have access to so easily. And we think of, and same with like canned tomatoes and these things that you're talking about, it's like we have certain habits, right? That you're like, this is what I do with these things, and that's it. And I think with peanut butter and jelly, we think peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And then oats, it's like oatmeal. But you take all of those things, you can make like a really simple granola bar. And this recipe is basically, you take mostly oats. And then I also suggest adding in anything you happen to have around in the cupboard, like if you have some leftover. My favorite thing to add is actually like when you have cereal and you have the very last bowl of cereal, and it's not going to be very good because it's like all sort of dusty, and it's not actually dusty, but it's like a little bit, the sort of dust from the other cereal is in there and it's not as nice. You throw that in with the oats, you won't even notice it, and you have like a different texture. Or you can add in dried fruit, that kind of thing, coconut, stuff like that, if you have them around. And I suggest really using up like the last of the bits that you have around. And then you take peanut butter and jelly, any flavor that you like that goes well with peanut butter, and a little bit of water, and you bring them to heat on the stove, and you mix it together, and it's like glue basically. And you pour that into the oat mixture, and you smush it all together, mix it all together, and press it into a pan, bake them. And then you can top it with a little bit more jelly, and you slice them into squares if you want, or long rectangles to make bars, but you have like a little breakfast bar sort of made out of the most normal breakfast things, but in this totally different form. And there's something for me that like I find so deeply satisfying about offering something like that, because I think that's so much of what can get frustrating about living on a budget, is just like eating the same boring stuff over and over again. And doesn't have to be that way if you sort of bring a little bit of creativity to the mix. And you know, I think a lot of the time when you're going through something difficult, it's hard to bring that creativity into it. And so if I can offer that in any small way, it's always quite fun to do so. So anyway, maybe try the peanut butter and jelly granola bars next time. And they work with sunflower butter and alternatives to peanut butter as well. Wow, everybody's so much more quiet tonight. I think that's kind of nice in a way. I mean, I love the questions, but I feel like maybe we answered some of them, and hopefully people are eating and enjoying. Does anyone want to share? Did anyone make this tonight? It sounds like at least someone was going to make like a double recipe. So I'm hopeful.
Okay. So somebody wrote in, Leanne, this dinner is delicious and so satisfying. Thank you so much for this wonderful dinner series. We'll be trying those peanut butter and jelly granola bars. Yeah, so if anybody has, a question, this is kind of the last chance in the series. So, ask away. But if not, then, we can head on out for the night.
Really. And yeah, like Todd said, I'd love if anyone is interested in the 5-week series that I'm going to be doing in October. It's going to be sort of similar to this, around building confidence, but it'll be over Zoom like this, but you'll be part of a group cohort, and I'll send out the recipes and sort of what were the theme of the week, some readings, and actually we're going to be doing like journaling together and sharing and really like experiencing it together. And you'll have access to me as your sort of like your coach in between, and other people that you're in the experience with who you can work with and chat with as we sort of build our skills from week to week. And then the final week is sort of the one where we're going to be tackling really how to cook for other people, in particular around sort of the pressure of the holidays. So it's going to be this like slow build up of our confidence into this thing that we think of as maybe one of the hardest things that we do as a home cook, which is like really hosting a larger meal and navigating all of that pressure. And we're going to make it all fun, because it's what it's supposed to be. The holidays are not supposed to make us unhappy. They're supposed to make us happy. They're supposed to be the thing where we get to take time off of the general pressures of life and spend time with the people that we love most and really experience that. And so we're going to be focusing on strategies for really how to do that, and enjoy the experience as best we can. So yeah, I would love it. And if anyone is sort of like, oh, I'm interested, or if it's like, oh gosh, I can't afford it or anything, just talk to me. You can always reach out. I have like sliding scales, and I just want anyone who is drawn to the information and wants to work with me, we'll make it work. So let me know.
I think there's one last oh, okay. So one question came in: how much will the class cost?
It's going to be $250 for the full 5-week at but I'll probably have some early bird pricing. And like I said, there could be some things could be moved and discussed if need be. So just let me know.
And another thing too, the person that asked that, please, when we send you the survey, let us know what a great experience it was, because then it helps us to maybe get Leanne back for, another series of some sort. So this one came in, and I think it's a nice way to kind of close out if anyone has any other questions, is I want to say how happy I was when I got your book and I read through it and discovered you wrote a book based very much how I cook. And it was so great to see a great selection of recipes and things. I wanted to try like Asian dumplings and empanadas and pizza dough. So thank you very much for writing this cookbook. I love it. Oh my gosh, and everyone's so quiet. Now all of these questions are coming in. Let's see here. I made the beef stroganoff with brown rice instead of noodles. So good.
Good call also on the brown rice, honestly. So nutty like that. I feel like that would be really good. I love it.
And one person wrote, "What are your credentials?" And I don't know.
Ooh, well, I mean, I have a master's in food studies from New York University. And I've written a couple books and I've done a lot of teaching and speaking. And I've won some awards and stuff like that too. But yes, if you were asking if I have a culinary degree, I do not. I do not. I'm a self-taught home cook.
Right. Well, Leanne, is there anything you'd like to close out with for the series?
Yeah. Let's do from Good Enough again, since we were talking about that. And I had flagged this earlier and then I almost forgot. So thank you, Todd, for that. I wanted to do the gratitude practice that I have from this book. And I think I might have done it with you guys the first day, but I love doing this one. I find it really touching. And I just love to do it with you guys again for our last one. So this is, I mean, for me, this is like prayer. I'm not religious, but I also am spiritual. I believe in everything and us being all connected and all of this kind of beautiful stuff. And I have the utmost respect for all kinds of spirituality and religion. But personally, prayer hasn't been that resonant for me for many years. But I think there's something really beautiful about taking a moment to be in gratitude around our meal. And so this is my version. So first I suggest to sit down with a snack or a meal in front of you. I would suggest this one. Relax your neck, your shoulders, and your jaw. Take a deep breath into your belly and exhale. Look at the food in front of you. Think about the ingredients and see which ones stand out to you. And so that's sort of something you do internally, or you could do it with people around the table, with your family or with your friends. You could just see, like, what is it that we're thinking about? Maybe it's the basil. And I can think about the fact that my very sweet neighbor gave me a basil plant and how good that makes me feel and how lucky I feel to have such a wonderful neighbor. So that's what comes for me. And think about, what is its history? How did it get here? Think about the land where it was grown or raised. All the people who worked to bring it to you, those who tended it and picked it and shipped it. The work that you and perhaps other members of your family did to pay for it. The work you did to prepare it, of course. It is work, but there's, joy in it. And also work is joyful. I don't mean to say otherwise. So try to feel a connection to all of these people taking care of you. Yeah. The love of strangers fills this bowl in front of you. We are never really alone. We are in this together. So that's, I'm sure you can see how I said, I'm not religious, but I do feel very clear that we as human beings are all interconnected, and that's true. It's not sort of an illusion or something we have to think our way into. It's the actual literal truth, is that we're all completely interdependent and we can all connect with each other in different ways at any time. And I think it's really important to do, because so much of what makes us feel unable in ways like where I'm thinking about like being depressed when it's hard to get out of bed in the morning, or when you feel too anxious to go out into the world, or you feel like you just can't do things, or the world is against you. All of those feelings really stem from feeling alone. And being alone is an illusion. And so things like this, we really do them in all sincerity, like really let ourselves mean it. When we feel this gratitude, when we look at these things, it can help us feel like we're not alone. And we can do that with anything, but it's particularly, I think, potent to do with food and with something that we've prepared ourselves. So thank you so much. If there's any last questions before we wrap up, this has truly been such a joy. I've been really honored to be with you guys, and really touched and appreciative of all of your wonderful questions. And a few of you have even reached out to me. It's been such a pleasure. I love doing classes like this, and I love to hear from you all. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this. One person wrote in, I'm grateful to have been part of these programs, and just thanks for everyone for coming, spending Wednesday nights with us in July, and have a wonderful rest of your summer. And look out for that survey. Let us know how we did, and maybe we can bring Leanne back at some point.
Love
So.
that.
All right. Well, have a good night, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now. So.